Bill Finch is the founding director of the Paint Rock Forest Research Center and a passionate voice for nature and conservation in Alabama. His vision for Paint Rock, in part shaped by his friendship with E.O. Wilson, includes not just groundbreaking science, but also perspectives of the humanities, inviting artists, writers, and thinkers into the heart of ecological inquiry. An advocate and writer, Bill authored Longleaf, As Far as the Eye Can See, a collaboration with photographer Beth Finch that captures the beauty and complexity of one of the world's most biodiverse ecosystems. Bill served as environmental reporter and editor for the Mobile Press and executive director for the Mobile Botanical Gardens, and was the conservation director for the Alabama chapter of the Nature Conservancy.
Great to hear about your dad. What a thing. How do you get to know a place like Alabama? That's where we start. And getting to know Alabama is about getting to know North America. It's about getting to know your place in the world. It's getting to know about your value in the world, and how to take advantage of it. We undervalue Alabama. Oh, it's a great place to raise kids. It's a nice place to be. It's a nice place to build a house. It's cheap to build a house here, etc. But it's like, if you understood Alabama, it would be like you woke up one day and you found out your mother was about to save the planet. It's like you found out your best friend was this worldwide celebrity. We continue to undervalue Alabama and our place in it and its place in the world. And that's part of the theme of why we're here, because we care not just about Alabama, but because we care about the whole planet. And we now know that Alabama has a special role to play in that. And that's why we're at Paint Rock. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here to tell you these stories. How we tell these stories about Alabama, how we get to know Alabama, is very much a part of this talk too. And so we're going to talk about science, and we're going to talk about art. And we're going to talk about both and how they're integrated. And we're going to talk about this arm, which I want you to look at very carefully. That is an arm. It is a painted arm. It's a painted arm that is probably, we don't know exactly, hundreds, thousands of years old. It's a painted arm on a rock in Alabama. We're going to talk more and more about it. That arm, to me, is pointing at some very interesting things. I look at that arm repeatedly. Can you see the arm? Can you see my arm, and can you see how that arm works? Coming from a shoulder with a thumb and a hand, and it seems to be pointing. We're going to come back to that. But first we're going to talk about this art. This is a messy piece of art, a very colorful piece of art that's about Alabama. It's about the geology of Alabama, and it's about the first thing you begin to understand about Alabama is how messy that geology is and how colorful it is. Most states don't look like that when you break them down, and it shows all of the geological parts of Alabama in North America converging in a very small place around us, right here, and throughout Alabama. And that's part of the story. It's a story of diversity. We're going to use that term. We're going to use it over and over. We're going to say it as loud as we can. because it's very important to understanding where you are, what your potential is, what your future is. And that diversity was expressed not only in the geology, but in the aquatic realm. So let's just run through this catalog of Alabama. Alabama, you may know, I hope you know, you will certainly need to know, is the center of aquatic diversity in North America. We have more fish species than any other state. You know, again and again, when we think about Alabama, we can only think about one thing at a time. Diversity is very hard for us. You noticed? So we're the center of fish diversity in North America. We have one fish, largemouth bass, right? Somehow that's striking. We have more fish in a single stream. Paint Rock River has more fish in 100 yards of Paint Rock River than in the entire state of California. Just to give you some perspective. And Paint Rock River is not unusual in that way. There are many small rivers in Alabama that have more fish species than the entire state of California. It blows California out of the water, just a single stream. Mussels. And I want to talk a lot about mussels and why they're so neat and why they're so cool. They're like, it's like the flowering of the rivers is when the mussels are reproducing. And they're astonishingly beautiful. There's a picture that my wife took there of a mussel flowering, looking like a fish, which is meant to attract other fish. They pave the rivers here. They're really hugely important globally. The center of mussel diversity globally is Alabama. Alabama has more mussel species than all of South America. Alabama has more mussel species than all of South America. The Paint Rock River itself, a 50-mile long river, a 56-mile long river, has 3.5 to 4 times more mussel species than all of Eastern and Western Europe. From Norway to England to Spain to Turkey. That's amazing. Amazing. Crawfish diversity. All right. So you find crawfish amusing. They're really interesting. Alabama is the global center of crawfish diversity. Just to use another measure, not Louisiana. We have more than 100 species of crawfish. There's not any place close. Almost any measure of aquatic diversity, Alabama's going to excel. Turtles. We find out, ask me about turtles later, we find out why we want to know about turtles. They live an incredibly long time. You might want to know why. When they went to look for the center of turtle diversity in the world, there were 2 centers. One was in northern India, in the Himalayas. The other was in Alabama. Alabama is the center of turtle diversity in the Western Hemisphere. Something may be going on here, do you think? And there it is, caves. That's Kendra in the cave mouth. That's one of the caves the center of cave diversity in North America is not Kentucky. It's not New Mexico. The center of cave diversity in North America is Alabama. It's Jackson County. More cave life there than any place else, maybe in the temperate world with the exception of Transylvania, and Transylvania is pretty close. But you got to go a long way to find anything like that. And there's the study that demonstrates it. And then there are things like trees. Well, you know, that's Washington State. Sorry, Mike. That's New England. That's North Carolina. Where is the center of tree diversity in the United States? You can look at that map, and it shows that big blue stain is the center of medium to large tree diversity in North America? Where is that big blue stain? There's the center of deciduous tree diversity in North America, trees that lose their leaves. Where is that big blue stain? Where is the centerpiece of that? Here's another one looking at where's the center of oak diversity in North America? Surely that's in the mountains of North Carolina. Where is it? It's in Monroe County, basically, right around Tim Sparrow's place. That's the center of the center. It's extraordinary. Alabama has 40 species of oaks. If you were to walk the Appalachian Trail from North Carolina up through Pennsylvania and into New England, you'd see, if you were very lucky, 12. We're the center of oak diversity north of Mexico. Magnolia diversity. Trillium diversity. Where do you think that was? It's in Alabama. More than likely, Alabama is the center of ash diversity, which is very consequential right now. It's probably the center of, it's certainly the center of hickory diversity. There are 15, 16 species of hickories in the world. 12 to 13 of those species are in Alabama. If you were to go to the Paint Rock Forest Research Center, you could easily see 9 species of hickories in a few acres. Extraordinary center of diversity. We probably qualify as maples, except we still haven't figured out what kind of maples we have. We don't even know what to call them yet. And that's no joke. Sunflowers. What is the global center of sunflower diversity? There are 52 to 53 species of sunflowers globally that are now accepted. 26 of those are in Alabama. Where might you think the global center of sunflower diversity would be? Even the sunflowers that grow in Ukraine came from North America. Silphiums, azaleas, deciduous azalea diversity, probably the center of that is Georgia and Alabama globally. And then bamboo. Where do you think the center of bamboo diversity in North America would be now? Bamboo, of all things. We should talk a lot about that. Jimmy Triplett's here. He's done a lot of work on that. We'll be doing more work on that. Buckeyes, the Buckeye State, sorry. What do you think the Buckeye State is? Alabama is the center of Buckeye diversity as well. Why are all these things happening? Well, we talked about the geology. We should talk about rainfall. We have to talk about this thing that we used to call climate, that we can't say in public, we can't say when we're turning in requests for funding anymore. That's the way the world has become. One of the elements of climate is rainfall. What is the center of, where is the center of rainfall in the U.S.? There's a little place over on the Pacific Northwest on some of the islands. Where is that great center of rainfall in the U.S.? Look at where it is. That plays an important role. There's an important role for time, and you should understand this because time is about change. That's what time represents. It represents changes in things like climate, which have always occurred. And there have been big changes. Everything, a very short time ago, everything virtually north of Washington, D.C. was under a glacier. So where was the forest? Where were the turtles? Where were the fish? Time. Very important to understand about where you are. And there's some of the evidence of that. And then we're back to this place, this deciduous forest. And that's why we're in Paint Rock. Because it represents the forefront of diversity in North America. It represents the forefront of how species reacted to climate over time. And because many of the genetics that were lost, many of the species that were lost under the glaciers are retained in places like Paint Rock. And so we feel like maybe climate changes again, do you think? If it does, what is the country going to do about that? Where are the genetics coming from that bring us forward into the future? That's why we're here. And that's why we're there for the science in a beautiful place called Paint Rock Valley. Incredible trees, a lot of intact forests, incredible caves of all kinds, Beautiful places, many of Beth's pictures here. Incredible flowering diversity. The herbaceous diversity is really great. We're beginning to work on that. Rare trees that don't exist anywhere else, virtually except for the Paint Rock Valley, are just outside it, like smoke trees. And so we brought together people, a guy named Stephen Hubble at UCLA, the University of California, was head of the evolutionary biology department, and he came and said, we want to create a research center, and we want to use a protocol that we're using, we developed in Barrow, Colorado, that's changed the way we understand forest. And another guy named E.O. Wilson from Alabama is chewing my ear off about, we need more research centers. We need to understand Alabama. We need a place to do this. Where are we going to do this? And so at one point, as we were beginning to develop this, Stephen Hubble and E.O. Wilson and Patty Gawadi came together on our porch to discuss this, and it was scary. They were typical academics. They argued the whole time about what it was going to be and what we should emphasize. And it was very useful in the end. And we created a research center at Paint Rock based on the ideas of these great scientists. We decided that diversity was going to play an important role in every way in our system, and we were going to work to make a research center that trained a new generation of people to understand Alabama, and that was more open. And we did it on a 4,000-acre tract that is part of the Nature Conservancy, and we created a 150-acre specialized area where we looked at every stem larger than a pencil and followed it for 50 years. And I'll show you what that means in just a minute. We have housing facilities and residential facilities. We've brought in more than 50 people have worked with us on a great tree census that we're working with on that plot, to where we understand every tree on that plot. Every tree has a tag on it. Almost 90,000 stems have now been tagged. Let's call it, Rick says it's 89,000. We're going to go with that number. 89,000 trees in 150 acres all have their own individual number. They've all been measured. They've all been identified. They've all been mapped, and they'll be followed for 50 years. It's a monumental effort. We're already learning incredible things by it. We've had people from University of Georgia, Yale, Harvard, University of Alabama, and from many state universities there. And this is the kind of information we've produced. The image on the longer image on your right is a map of the whole plot with every stem that has been tagged. And we'll be following that for 50 years. It's really provided us incredible information. The picture on the left is one of the ways we can break down how do trees occupy this site. What kind of trees? How do they decide what tree grows where? It's a big question that we have as we're thinking about forests. We're doing incredible research in the caves. We have 3 cave researchers now working at Paint Rock. It's really quite remarkable and really excited. Hazel Barton, who's now at the University of Alabama, one of the world's great cave researchers, is doing work in our caves. One of the great things that she's working on with NASA, or if NASA continues to exist, is a project looking at photosynthesis in the dark parts of caves. It's a remarkable thing. You understand what photosynthesis means? What is going on? We have photosynthesis going on in the dark parts of our caves. NASA is very interested in that because it is a form of life, a form of photosynthesis that we've never documented before. And it probably, NASA figures, represents what life might be like on other planets. A whole new life form. A whole new colony of creatures. And Jimmy, they actually have chloroplasts. It's bizarre. We're looking at all sorts of new species that we see out there. We're going to have a new azalea that will probably be published, we're told, sometime this year and next year. New azalea species. There's a new violet species which will come out in fall. It's really bizarre. A new buckeye species that we're going to be working on. And then if anybody can tell me what that oak is, you'll save us all a lot of trouble. We don't know what that oak is. And it's quite common in the Paint Rock Valley. And how a 120-foot tall oak tree escaped attention for so long says something about how little we know about where we are. An incredible thing. Things like elms, very important. Understanding that elms were lost over much of North America, and yet in Paint Rock they're still there. And American elms, which you heard were wiped out, perfectly healthy. What does that mean? Well, it probably means that the genetics of American elms are far more complex than people who studied them in the Northeast thought they were. And that the future of American elms in North America depends on Alabama and Georgia and Northwest Florida. Very important things to think about. It's like we're thinking about where we were with chestnuts many years ago with things like ash, trying to understand how we prevent the loss of ash trees, which we're about to lose, unless we understand the genetics better. And we're working with Hudson Alpha, a great genetics institute in Huntsville, to begin to unravel these things. We've started a major program now, a DNA program, not only to understand every species on the plot, but every individual, the DNA of every individual on the plot. We won't probably get to 90,000 stems, but we'll do thousands and maybe tens of thousands of trees to understand genetic differences between individuals. We've got University of Alabama working on a 300-year history of this forest. We're working on shortleaf pine, one of the great lost ecosystems, and savannas, and we've been collecting cones, working on that. It's all very good, but I'm coming back to art, because there's that hand again. And what we recognize is that it was not just science that was going to help us know where we are, but even our scientists recognized that art was going to play a really big role. And so when Tim mentioned that he brought the crew up with him a number of years ago, these are the pictures from that. And we began the discussions that have led to this program where we're working with art. And we brought artists in over a long period of time to understand, what is this forest like? Why is it here? What does the science tell us? What do we understand about science when we look at this forest? How can art inform science, and how can science inform art? And so there was a tremendous amount of participation by many of the artists in this room. It was a lot of fun for a lot of folks. We hope to continue it over the long haul. We're going to press Tim to think about how to do that. It'll be a lot of fun, and Bryce. And that's been part of the process, is bringing those artists in. So what kind of art is important? This is the way we are so monocultural in Alabama. If you ask to say, oh, what is an image that represents Alabama? It's going to be some magnolia over and over and over again. I don't know how the Campbell soup can got in there. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about understanding diversity. We're talking about understanding our place in it. We're not talking about just making pretty. We're talking about, what does art mean? What can art tell us? And I think that's very important when we think about this. Not just whether it's pretty, but the power of nature. And that's something you'll see in some of the art, because we had a tornado. And we began to appreciate that tornado was not just destructive, it was creative. It was our friend in the forest. And we're working with that, understanding those kinds of robust actions of nature. And that comes back to the hand. And when you look at that hand, which is on a cliff wall, I can't say where because it's very precious and it could be destroyed, But when you look at that hand, as it turns out, it was pointing at geological formations. And it was pointing at something that you can't see in this picture, unfortunately, because it's a little oversaturated, but it points to the bark of a tree, a 250 million year old tree that was embedded there. And it was as if the hand was saying, what is that? Who was that? Who made that image? It was the hand of the artist trying to understand what is going on in this place, trying to understand it. It was almost a scientific endeavor to try to understand that. One of the, okay, what's going on here? There we go. And that kind of art is throughout Paint Rock. When we think of art, we're not just thinking about something that happened 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 150 years ago in Alabama. We have artwork in Alabama that's 7,000 years old. It's been here for a long time. People have been trying to understand this place and trying to develop images that help them to understand it. And sometimes they hope that would control it. There's a shaman with a rattle in Marshall County. There's another great image from Jackson County of a bird, perhaps a thunderbird, on a rock. There's one of my favorite pictures. It's hard to see, but it actually seems to be a bear with a paw and a human underneath it. These are all images that are part of our forest. And it's all about human attempts to use art to see and understand where they are over a long period of time. And a great scientist named E.O. Wilson, one of Alabama's great scientists, made a case that we're overemphasizing STEM sometimes, that we actually need to be thinking about the liberal arts and the humanities when we study things. And Ed wrote a number of books. In Consilience, he writes, there's an important story to tell about where we came from and why we're here. Neither science nor arts can be complete without combining their separate strengths. Science needs the intuition and metaphorical power of the arts. The arts needs the fresh blood of science. This is one of my favorite things. So Ed did a great interview. Ed loves snakes. And we have plenty of timber rattlers. We cherish our timber rattlers at Paint Rock Forest Research Center. We give them names and let them go their way, and we work around them all day long. And they're the most insouciant of all creatures. They do not want to meddle with humans at all. They think humans are nasty, and they don't want to put their mouths on them. We love our rattlesnakes. And Ed said, you know, if you read that quote, Ed is saying, you know, wouldn't it be great if we thought as artists how to see the world as a rattlesnake? What would a rattlesnake landscape look like if we understood how rattlesnakes see the world? If we understood how spiders see the world? If we understood how ants see the world and created art that was like that? That would have been one of Ed's favorite things. But Ed loved the idea of combining art with science. And I think it's very important for us now, maybe even more important now, as we've gotten to the point where science is going to be prohibited from speaking. It's an incredible situation. Artists are going to have to help us. If we're not allowed to use words, poets and prosodists are going to have to help us find the new words that fill in the blanks. It's an important time. If we're not allowed, if we're going to create a world in which we're not allowed to know things, in which we pretend not to know things, artists are going to have to help us find a world again that we can know. It's going to be an important collaboration between art and science going forward. And I think that's what this program is about that we're seeing tonight. It excites me that it's part of what we do at Paint Rock, and I hope it will always be a part of Paint Rock. Thank you all.
We have time for a few questions and comments, if any of you have them.
Yes.
Good evening, I'm Gabriela Senes. Here an American. Didn't know, I am familiar with your all's collaboration from recent past. I have 10 acres in Claiborne County that very much interested in this kind of stuff. How would Paint Rock and what we are doing help the community? Like, not just all of this stuff is new to me.
Yes, so I would love to get into one of the things we're working on. For example, is our short-leaf pine program, which is really great, in which we actually provide. We're looking at a new way to see the forest, and looking at new ways to rebuild the forest that we've nearly destroyed with loblolly clones. So that's one way we can look at the plans. But you know, Kendra and I did a proposal, and I went and did some research for that proposal, and we realized that research in Alabama is a huge employer. It's a massive employer. I mean, much larger than the car industry. And that applies for places like JSU, where there are a huge number of researchers working here. It certainly applies in Birmingham. And it is a huge driver in Birmingham's economy. It is a huge driver in Huntsville's economy. It's a huge driver in Mobile's economy, and Tuscaloosa's economy, and Auburn's economy, and even Montgomery's economy, which we don't think about. Research is huge throughout the state. Kendra, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was much more than the car industry. And car industry, that included the car dealerships. I mean, you throw in the kitchen sink in there to get the numbers for the cars industry, and we think that's the big industry. It's research. Research plays a huge role in your livelihood here, and so it's really important. And the more we have, I think the more we understand and spend our time, we don't have to exclusively focus on Alabama, but I think that by understanding Alabama and its role in the entire country, we're actually finding ways to ensure that research dollars are spent here and that they have a value. You know, we have this is a very small model. We don't think about our diversity as an asset in every sense of the word diversity. But in Perry County, we have something called the Alabama Aquatic Biodiversity Center, where they're actually propagating rare mussels to distribute to other states. It could be these kinds of issues as climate changes and as places struggle. I think these become an economic model for us to think about. We've never thought about trading on our assets. We've never even explored that potential. So that's really great. We do hope that the Paint Rock Forest Research Center becomes a model for other places. And we're developing it as we go along. But we think that Paint Rock is not the only place something like this could happen. It's taken a lot of work to get to where we are. Don't underestimate it. But we think it can be done at other places in Alabama, and we hope it will be too. So I think there are many benefits to the local communities from the work we're doing. Don't get me started on grasses. I could talk a long time about how these grasses could change your local communities once we begin thinking about them. But we can talk about that. I think there are many benefits.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry. So you mentioned.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm very sorry about that.
No.
So you mentioned sunflowers and how we have 26 of 53 of the sunflowers found in the world. Are you saying that Alabama could potentially serve as like a breeding ground for the species that go to other countries? This is like some type of origin place?
Yeah, so, right. So it's very interesting, isn't it? We just got off the boat with Columbus here, and we have very little appreciation for where we are. Most of the things we do in Alabama, whether it's, we bring in, our whole mode of operation is to bring in things from other places, whether it's trees or plants or automobile plants, or we bring them from other places. But Japan is a great place where they have thoroughly explored their native flora, and they've created incredible opportunities for food, for medicines, for beauty, just by exploring their own flora and being proud of it. We've never done that in Alabama. We have very little understanding of what that flora is. It's amazing. How do we not know that we're the center of hickory diversity? How do we not know that we're the center of oak diversity? How do we not know that we're the center of sunflower diversity? How do we not know that we're the center of trillium diversity? It's because we never explored it. And once we explore it, then I think there are great opportunities for exporting these things to other places and developing them. Yes?
Hello, there's some of us here tonight who are from Wild, Alabama. And thank you so much for your talk. One question is, are there any eastern hemlocks in the Paint Rock area?
It depends on how you define the Paint Rock area. But yes, there are certainly in Pisgah Gorge and in every one of the gorges that face north on the Tennessee River. It's an odd little thing. The gorges and the area ravines that face south don't have the hemlocks. So Paint Rock largely opens southward and doesn't have any hemlocks. Probably the soils are not great for it either. But yes, we have certainly in DeKalb County through southern Jackson County, there is hemlock there all the way back to the Bankhead. The woolly adelgid has been found in DeKalb County and is probably now in Jackson County as well. We don't know how those hemlocks are going to react. I wish we had more study going on to look at that, yeah.
And also, if you would indulge, you mentioned the relationship between rain and change, I believe. Would you say more about that?
Yes, well, one of the cool things about Alabama is that rain has been fairly stable here compared to the rest of the country. So Florida, for example, Florida survived the glaciation during the Pleistocene glaciations, and so you would think there would be a lot more tree diversity there, but there were a couple of impediments, one of which is that Florida turned into a virtual desert during much of the Pleistocene. Alabama still had a good bit of rainfall during that period of time, maybe not quite as much as we have now. So one of the cool things about Alabama is that as the rest of the country has changed with climate, Alabama's seen some of those changes, but not as severe. Why wasn't it as severe in Alabama and Northwest Florida and Mississippi? Why weren't those climatic changes as severe? It's because of the other word we're not supposed to say anymore, Gulf of Mexico. Please say that over and over again. It's my grandmother taught me to say it, Mike Williams taught me to say it. I'm not going to let some guy from New York tell me what to call the Gulf of Mexico. So, but the Gulf of Mexico, this is important because the Gulf of Mexico is a huge flywheel that is continually spinning heat up out of the Caribbean. Maybe it's going the other way. I'll have to think which way. But the literal current is going the other way. It's spinning it up out of the Caribbean and distributing it and making Alabama's climate more stable. It may be too hot for you at times, but it is much more stable, and it's been great for the for the flora and for the fauna here. And it's how we've avoided some of the great changes that we've seen in other places.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, thank you. Bill, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for coming out here tonight.